This is Six Slices of Cheese on Riot at the Movies. I'm here with Jordan. Actually, I think I have to do it this way because I think after I edit this,
last
flip the camera,
episode, I saw your thumbnail. It's like
I'm an
I'm an
idiot.
idiot. It's like pointed the wrong way.
I don't know which way. It can't be on the right side of the screen, but I think it just mirrored me. I have no idea.
Yeah, I never know.
Anyway, you may have seen Jordan from every other post I do on here, because we like to talk about dinosaurs in a mining facility, which we'll get into a little bit more. The point of this show is we ask people on the Facebook page to pick a topic, and then I and a guest pick 6 elements of that topic. The winning votes were a tie for both robots and dinosaurs. So what we did is we made it into a show about robot dinosaurs. I am so sure there are so many more robot dinosaurs than we had when looking into it, but there are just some that just stand out right away. So it wasn't too hard to grab that.
There's always a couple that are forgotten to the internet. When you get into this genre stuff, whenever it like deals with comic books, it's like, there's so many. Like even the internet doesn't know.
I have a few that I'll throw into conversation that I noted down that you and I did not talk about online beforehand. But I just feel like there must be some Hanna-Barbera robot dinosaurs. It just feels like a thing that they would do. Like, let alone just a character like that. But I feel like there must have been like a Scooby-Doo episode where they thought a dinosaur was haunting someplace, and at the end they like put a spike in his tail and he walks away, and it's just an amusement park robot, and it's got a skin on it. Or like
Old Man Wilson is like in a box with a remote control.
Yeah, I can't actually think of an episode like that, but I can't at the same time imagine how that didn't happen.
There's a lot fewer episodes of that original Scooby-Doo than I thought. Because when I went to watch them again, I was like, I guess the reason I saw the same episodes over and over again is because they only did like, a season of them. And they just played them on loop forever. Because I guess you didn't need that many to go into syndication back then, or they were all playing on the same network. I don't know.
Didn't have that much competition at that point for cartoons.
That's true, yeah.
But then again, there was a million other series ripoffs, and they just sort of redid the same thing over and over again. But then when you get into Scrappy, the dinosaur has to be real. So.
Well, that was the thing that blew my mind about Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island when I saw that when I was younger. I was like, oh my gosh, the monsters are real.
Nothing beats.
I guess I hadn't seen a lot of the Scrappy era. I'd watched a lot of Pup Named Scooby-Doo and the Scooby-Doo movies, and then the original, and that was most.
There's just sort of a fan thing that you're not supposed to like the Scrappy stuff. Some of it is pretty bad. Sidekicks in general, through history, is pretty bad.
He's the Jar Jar of Scooby-Doo.
Sadly. So, before we get into the robot dinosaurs, my one state of the address to the universe, I'm drinking a bottle of Coca-Cola. So the last 2 videos, I mentioned how I was drinking a can of vanilla cherry Coke, and that had become like an addiction for me. All the variety stores in my area no longer have them because they had large stocks of them since the middle of last year, and now nothing's coming across the border again. So,
oh man,
Toronto is all out of vanilla cherry Coke. The pandemic is driving me insane.
The underground vanilla cherry Coke smuggling syndicate.
Yeah, the dangerous underground hookup.
That stuff's awesome. There's always like that one friend whose family has it when no one else does.
Yeah.
With me, my friend Ethan, every time I see a vanilla Coke or a vanilla cherry Coke, I just immediately think of him, because every time I would go over there, they would have, not in the fridge, they would just have like 3 12-packs just like on the floor in their kitchen. All right, kids, grab yourself a vanilla cherry Coke.
I mean, that would be a thing for me here too, because again, they don't really produce it in Canada except seasonally. So people would like stock up on it, or they cross the border and they,
it's like the Shamrock Shake of Canada.
Yeah. I didn't have one of those. No, wait. Time has become so relevant. I was like, wait, did I miss out on that this year? And I'm like, wait, that hasn't happened yet. St. Patrick's Day hasn't happened. You go into a dollar store on January 1st, and there's already green hats everywhere. So I don't know when St. Patrick's Day is supposed to happen.
I was on tour one year with the band. It was like this sort of like smaller trio when the Shamrock Shake was happening, and that was like the official drink of our tour. Like we stopped at every stop to get a Shamrock Shake. Like we must seize the shake while it's available to us.
So Motley Crue, you were not.
Yeah, exactly.
like St. Patrick's Day for Motley Crue. Yeah, we're gonna drink whiskey and get fucked all night. And your band, oh, Shamrock Shakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess
Because
that's the psychedelic folk trio equivalent of, of a party.
somewhere I have a little hand puppet that is of Grimace's Irish uncle, like O'Grimmy or something. It was just,
There's actually a funny Motley Crue story in my life where I've been like, there's a band I'm in with my brother. We've been a band for like almost 12 years now or something. And the guitarist that's in our band, he was in the band for years and years. And one day he was just like, he had this really serious look on his face. He's like, guys, I have to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody else. And we're like, oh my God, what is he about to say? And he's like, my uncle was in Motley Crue. And my family is no longer welcome at certain hotel chains because of it.
his uncle was like a filler member, or is it?
No, he was like a legit member, but he went by a pseudonym, so you never knew his last name. But then I looked it up and I was like, oh my gosh, yeah.
Are you not allowed to tell me which member?
I'm sure he won't watch this anyway, but yeah, it's the one with the last name Deal. I think the chances that Jackson's going to see this are pretty slim.
But yeah, my uncle is really old Mick Mars. He's just like he's the old guy in the band. Oh, every one of those bands has an old guy in the band.
Now I gotta look it up and see which one.
He's like, he's Vince Neil? What? I hear Vince Neil's working out. He's trying to not be fat anymore.
I think is it Mick Mars? Yeah.
I was thinking, I think he would somehow tell somebody if it was Vince Neil.
Yeah, Robert Allen Deal.
Oh, okay. His real name is Deal. Okay, Neil and Deal. That's why he had to. Well, I mean, he changed his name to the weirdest fucking fake name ever. Nicky Nick Mars.
The security guard in Dinosaurs in a Mining Facility is related. I don't know if he's like his uncle or like they're related somehow.
Keenan, oh wait, he probably wouldn't know. Anyway, we're here to talk about
story fame.
We're here to talk about robot dinosaurs. This is what this show does. It goes off topic.
Yeah.
Which we had three that we were going to kind of bring up as the attention. It's not like Purple Podcast. We're not going to battle them, but I'm going to bring up one to start.
Yeah, we can just like alternate or something.
Yeah, I decided I would bring up the concept of the toys because there were tons of robot dinosaur toys.
Oh yeah.
Pre-Jurassic Park, there's always been a love for toys as dinosaurs for kids and robots, so why not mix them? The one that I brought up first was, depending on where you were and what time you were a kid, they were sort of called Zoids.
Oh yeah.
Their name slightly changed over the Robot Lux to Technozoids. So then the cartoon came out just as Zoids. Sometimes it was really predominantly about tigers, saber-tooth tigers that were just a rip-off of the White Power Rangers toy.
Yeah. Or the liger, yeah.
Yeah. They had
lion tiger hybrid, I guess, is a liger. Bred for their skills and magic.
Ligers are real, man. Oh, they are actually. Ligers are cool. Yeah. I not sound like Napoleon Dynamite, but ligers are cool.
They are cool.
I want one. I just ride it around. If these are actual cat, that'd be the size of Battle Cat.
Just paint it green and slap a saddle on it. Who gives a shit?
Yeah, whatever. There's tons of usable hair dye to dye your cats these days. The thing with my story for Zoids is at the time, in the mid 80s, when they were having their first wave of just re-releasing the same toys over and over again, then they would add a gorilla into it, but then re-release the T-Rex and then re-release tiny versions that were little tiny wind-up versions of them and pretend that the other toys didn't exist before. But they had one called the Ultrasaurus, which was like this arm's length. I mean, as a child, it was probably arm's length. It was probably about this long.
Like a Brachiosaurus or a Brontosaurus
of some sort, yeah. And its whole body kind of moved as you turned it on and powered it up and little parts lit up. I feel, and this is a childhood memory. Would you lose?
That's the one kind of dinosaur you'll have in here today. So.
For the sequel, have to be bigger and you'll have to like ride one around.
Yeah, painted gold, and for some reason his head is like backwards. I guess he's like looking back.
The T-Rex is coming to get him.
Yeah.
The reason I always remember it is because my parents were pretty damn broke and cheap when I was a kid. So
yeah, same.
I have this feeling is that the one I had, every time I look up pictures of it, and it looks how how many see-through lit up parts there are to it. I feel mine didn't have that, but not much of it lit up. It still moved, and it was still that big. I feel like somehow I must have had like a Chinatown bootleg version of it.
Yeah, it was the Special Man version of.
Yeah, and which is funny because when you look at those toys and the fact that they've been re-released, it just with different colors, and every couple of years they re-release them and slightly change the name to say they're new. The whole toy is kind of a Chinatown bootleg of toys. So that's why as a kid I'm like, is it a childhood memory that I just think mine was different, or was it because I mean they look cool, but there's also this certain level where you look at it and go, yeah, that's not Transformers. Like that looks like, especially because you had to build them. I think for a lot of kids, if they had the choice, do you want a Zoids that you have to build or a Transformer that just comes the way it is and you know it because it has a cartoon, you're just like, oh yeah, the big flashy red Transformer, why not?
Yeah.
But the very size of this Ultrasaurus thing, I will cut in the middle of this and play a commercial for the Temco ones where they had this cool.
You see the
commercial.
scale?
Yeah, you see a bunch of them together, it moves, and it had this ridiculous theme song where it says, don't just build them, you bring them to life. Looking back on that, I'm like, wait, that is cooler that you can do that they move and you can build them and adjust them and that. But as a little kid, I was like, no, it needs to have the really cool packaging. It needs to have like some recognizable symbol because I am a sold out Coca-Cola generation kid. So I didn't have many Zoids, but I did have the one really huge one. Be it a
so it says you bring them to life. Would they mean that you're just like modifying or creating it yourself, or is it like?
Well, you could take pieces off and put them on other parts.
Yeah.
And of course, when you did put it together to assemble it out of the box, then you could turn it on and it walked away. But I mean, that's about as much as it did because they all walked. And they lit up and like the T-Rex made a sound as it walked. But I mean, when you get down to that, it's still just really just a wind-up toy. And so, and especially like the smaller ones had literally the same little wind-up pins that like every McDonald's wind-up toy had. So as a kid, you look at that and you're like, wait, it's just a really big McDonald's toy.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a good idea though, to have the voice box mixed with the super toy.
Yeah.
Giant. Like those Shogun Warriors toys that were like huge. I want one of those so bad.
Yeah, I'm just that little bit too young for it. I'm close because I'm older than you, so I'm closer to the time period that those would have come out. But again, I would have just missed the boat. I saw, I can't think of her name, but it was, maybe I have her on Instagram where I just went through like a rabbit hole in YouTube videos, but there's this one reviewer of large classic toys, and she had, like you, a wall of dinosaurs behind her, but the wall, the layer across was all the Shogun Warriors Godzilla that had like launching fist.
Yeah.
She had like 12 of that.
I love the design of that Godzilla. Like it's so dorky looking and like not at all like it actually is, but it like, and it's green, which Godzilla isn't, even though so many people think he's green, but he's like more like a charcoal color most of the time.
I mean, I'm a Godzilla fan, but when it gets down to being a Godzilla fan, I'm a versus Megalodon era, like, you know, dorky, cartoony.
Yeah, I actually just bought a Jet Jaguar shirt online because I saw the rest of their shirts. There was a really cool Gigan design that I wanted, but it was only like available in like 3XL, and I was like, this Jet Jaguar one's gonna sell out if I don't buy it right now. So
Gigan's a great one to just try to describe to somebody. They're like,
yeah,
I think he might be a robot, but he's an alien. His hands are like knives, and he has like a laser eye. He doesn't really have eyes.
Well, it's funny because when you look at the original design, he's sort of like a chicken, like somehow.
Yeah,
yeah. But then he gets his super edgy 2000s hard rock Zack Snyder design.
Yeah.
Which this is the Final Wars one. And I love Gigan. I had to have two of them.
That's from an era where Space Godzilla already existed. So, I mean, everybody looked edgy and cool at that point.
Yeah. And that kind of ties in.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a great segue to one of the ones that you were going to pick.
Because in the Space Godzilla film, the robot they used to fight him is Mogura, who is built from the leftover remains of the Heisei era of Mechagodzilla.
I don't know those things.
And I think that Mechagodzilla, the 90s one, that was like the first version of Mechagodzilla that was actually like a mecha that people piloted from the inside versus just being controlled by those
Aliens.
Planet of the Apes ripoff aliens
Yeah.
from the first one, which I have here. I've got the first Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. You can
Nice.
see that, and this is also the one that introduced King Caesar, which he's hilarious because they did not cut down his song that like brings him to life. It's like a full like 3-minute song. And like the whole movie, they're building up to, the great King Caesar. We need the ancient Joel or whatever the mythology is for him. And then he finally comes to life and just immediately gets his ass kicked. And then he just kind of like hangs back for the rest of the movie while Godzilla mops everything up.
Which that and his like cartoony look make him one of the most forgettable characters. I actually got a toy of him. His actually kind of piled away in somewhere and it's still in the box because a lot of my toys I don't keep in the boxes, but that one I did, not because I was like, oh, it's a cool thing to collect. It's kind of like, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, how do I play with this?
He seems like Hanaman.
You could sing to him, but
the like Ultraman movie, that's the Seven Brothers Ultraman.
Yeah.
Hanaman, and then there's a Kamen
cool.
Rider one. Oh man, I just bought this at a dollar store yesterday. This Ultraman puzzle.
Oh my god!
But I like how it has
find that at the dollar store.
A choking hazard on the puzzle, so like you have to like put the choking hazard part together too.
Yeah.
Obviously, this dollar store, it was like a non-name dollar store. It was like a buck or two place, and this is obviously the box to a puzzle, and they just photocopied it and put it into some like gimmicky bag. But it was $1, so I'm gonna get like 10 more of them and slide them into loot bags for people later. They'll be like, "What? You're the worst thing to wrap because it's so huge." It's so dumb.
And he's one of the like subtitled Ultramen. I forget which one. You know, there's like Leo and Zero and all that stuff. There's so many of those because that's like one of the few. Well, that and like Kamen Rider, like the Tokusatsu series that just never took a break. Like they've literally just been going since the 60s. Like. And now they're putting out all those steel books of every iteration of Ultraman, and it's like I'm gonna go broke. I have the Ultra Q one, which I found used.
That's the only one I got because
half-price books.
It's a weird little psychedelic.
It's awesome. It's all in black and white, and it's like the Twilight Zone mixed with kaiju.
Yeah, it's not just this repetitive superhero thing. Which I mean, I love that too. I'll watch. I have a bootleg release of a first season Kamen Rider before they were all showing up on the internet all the time.
Yeah.
And I
used to have to go download fan subs because like it was impossible to find.
Yeah.
And the fan subs weren't always super accurate and been pretty bad quality. So
I have 2 or 3 tapes that are in the mid 80s when Guyver the anime first came out. That Kamen Rider decided they'd make a bunch of movies that were kind of Guyver, where there was just a one-off for that character. And I think
there was the bio boosted armor was like the 2000s.
So he could bleed and shit like that, and it was so. And when you saw him change, it was this gross like green veins showed up over his face, and it looked like he was dying and turned into the thing. It was like, let's make it horrific. Which I mean, it's great because I love Guyver, and those movies are kind of fun. But I think we're not surprised why they didn't exist for the mainstream. It didn't continue to make a series of Kamen Rider Zo. Because
they could have. I feel like they could have done more Guyver too, because the cartoons and stuff they started building up the backstory and stuff, and I feel like there's a lot they could do with it. But
I mean, again, the wonder of being
there's not an audience for it.
I mean, I think there is. I mean, I have a couple of volumes of the VHS, like you get 3 episodes on a tape of the anime, and I'm like, it's fun, but you go 9 episodes in, and I'm like, well, nothing's really happened so far.
Yeah. That's what kind of happens too with Kamen Rider, where I'm like, I love this, and I know there's like, it's just not serialized. It's so episodic and like repetitive. A lot of times I'll just go to the file and I'll kind of scroll through until I see what the monster looks like, and then I'll decide if I'm going to watch the episode or not.
It's actually classic. I mean, but then you get into later, and the later of them became like more present day stuff has become teen comedic soap operas. And then Kamen Rider shows up at the end, and they like try to DC comic explain how they all connect, yet it's different timelines and shit.
Yeah,
and like,
it's the multiverse.
Yeah, the Kamen Rider multiverse. It's here, it's there. Hence why we'll eventually Kamen Rider will fight Godzilla.
Yeah, once a decade they'll do a team up, and then everyone's like, cool.
And I think now they're doing it once every 2 years, so it's a little bit. It's because crossovers is all that matters these days.
Yeah,
It's
but
like
Toho
next
is like I don't. I'm sure there's early examples, but like the shared universe of the Toho films, because they did Rodan was its own standalone film, Mothra was its own standalone film, and then they just started teaming everybody up.
which is why for the new American ones, why I'm super curious of it. I'm actually more curious than I was of the last movie of Kong versus Godzilla. But it's really weird how the first one was this is just Godzilla. It's showing this sort of destruction in a slightly kind of realistic kind of way. Then in the second one, it's like all out crazy. It's like batshit bizarre. Every monster you can get at is there. And now we're gonna go back to just a one-on-one, somehow fighting a giant monkey. It feels like you've gone back a step.
Yeah. Well, I know Adam Wingard said that like the trailers for that have just been the tip of the iceberg of like the monsters that are going to be in it. So
which is why everybody has this sort of belief that they've seen Mechagodzilla in the trailer. Or this theory that
it's unavoidable. Like I'm in a bunch of this groups and stuff, and it's just like everyone's debating it. I just saw someone post today that said whether or not Godzilla is disguised as Mechagodzilla in this movie, it's going to be the biggest "I told you so" moment for either side of the argument, because no one could stop talking about it like for the last 3 months.
What I think it is, I think it's Mephisto.
What a twist.
As a super comic book fan, that's what everyone's doing about WandaVision. And with only 2 episodes left, I'm so fingers crossed hoping it's not Mephisto. Not because I care either way, but just because I want everybody on the internet to go, wait, what? Why wasn't it?
To be wrong.
We were so sure. It's like, that stone? You see that stone that person tripped over? That's Mephisto. So I'm thinking Mechagodzilla might be wearing Godzilla's
Well, that's like when I was watching Legion, I was like, wait. Yeah. I thought when I was watching Legion, I thought Mojo was involved in the story somehow when I was watching the first season. But I was like, I don't know enough about the mythology of X-Men to really be saying. I just remember my limited issues I read in like the mid 90s.
There's not a lot of
and then I watched the Chris Claremont documentary, which was awesome.
Oh yeah, that's on his like run on the comics.
Yeah, that was excellent. Maybe when I go back and read all that stuff. But yeah, then they did the Millennium series of Godzilla Mechagodzilla is like one of my favorite versions, because the origin story of that is that they took the bones from the original Godzilla. I think in that continuity it's the 54 Godzilla. And then they built the robot around those bones. And somehow the current Godzilla, which is the son of the original Godzilla, can sense that they use the bones of his father, and that's why he has like this grudge against Mechagodzilla, which in this version is named Kiryu, which I think means like steel dragon or machine dragon or something like that.
It's like he has a grudge against this one because it uses the bones of his father. But then you think, wait, well, what else was it to exist for? Like, other than to fight Godzilla? What?
Yeah.
I mean, they were obviously going to fight, but yeah, sure. He's just angry because he's shinier than him. I
guess that one did well though, because it's the only one in that series that has continuity. The sequel directly after that, Tokyo SOS, is like, because the Millennium Era, they just kept rebooting every movie, but they always keep the original film in continuity. So they just keep doing that Halloween thing, but with every single movie, which is funny.
At that point, that mid '90s one, I'm thinking of like where they explain like Ghidorah. There's so much time travel in there. Yeah. And like in the worst, like it's like they're just stuck in a bad loop of screwing this up for themselves. And then someone's going to key back to that saying, well, now in the 200th movie, it's actually because of that one thing that happened in the 1995 movie at about an hour and 30 minutes in. That's what caused this to happen now.
That's one of the fun things about the 90s, like the Heisei era, like that whole series is there's like 7 movies, and those are the only movies in Godzilla's history pretty much, aside from the MonsterVerse ones now, that actually have a continuity to them, because they just like before and after they were either loosely connected or they just kept rebooting it. But in that one it's like, oh, Biollante, a cell from Biollante went into space and went into a black hole, and then since Biollante was cloned from the cells of Godzilla, then that fused with something in the black hole, which created Space Godzilla. and it's just like this super contrived like exposition scene where there's a bunch of people sitting around a table with like holograms explaining it, and they're like, at least that's our theory.
I mean, it could be wrong. Whatever. Meh. I mean, what are we gonna do other than have Godzilla fight it and then try to nuke it and make it worse? So,
Yeah, it's at least still more connected than the Cloverfield movies are.
Well, I don't. Are they supposed to be? I don't know. That was great about Space Godzilla. Is he looks so cool and psychedelic, but then when you like see him fighting, you're like, wait, how did he just not fall backwards? Like that whole thing is really cumbersome.
Well, that's one of the biggest criticisms against the Heisei era. Was like in the Showa era, they were pretty much wrestlers. They got to that point where they would like the suits. They had so much mobility in the suits compared to later on when they had like all these animatronics and stuff in them to make their faces move and stuff. Where pretty much all they do in those movies is like blast each other with energy beams.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, it's cool, but you do miss like seeing people get picked up and spun around by their tails and body slammed and all that stuff.
Flying clotheslines.
Yeah, like that tag team at the end of Godzilla vs. Gigan. I mean, even though there's a lot of stock footage in it, it's like one of my favorite moments, just because it's like that's what you want these movies for. Tag team wrestling monster action
of Godzilla sliding on his tail for some weird fucking reason.
Yeah. Yeah, and Godzilla vs. Hedorah, or what they call it, Godzilla vs. Smog Monster, when I was the version I had, but like where he uses his fire breath to like fly.
Yeah,
that image where like his head's here and his tail's like this and he's just going through the air. The director of that was like, that was his shot at doing it, and Toho were so upset by it. They were like, you ruined the franchise. You're never going to work in this town again.
With how much money it's worth, I mean, Japan takes that, what you would think is a fairly silly thing, really fucking seriously. The same way we take the Marvel movie seriously.
I think his name's his last name's like Bono or something like that.
It was Bono.
Yeah, not Bono, but now I think he like weaseled his way into being like a producer on the MonsterVerse movies. So this guy who was once threatened, or he was told that he ruined Godzilla, he ended up producing stuff. And actually, the guy who wrote the unproduced Fred Decker, or maybe it was when Stan Winston was attached before it became the Matthew Broderick one. There was like an earlier version of an American Godzilla that Stan Winston was going to do the effects for, and it was like a lot more faithful. He was going to fight a monster called the Griffin, and you can like see all the storyboards and stuff like that. The guy who wrote the screenplay for that which was pretty good, and then it got like it just fell apart. But he co-wrote the new King Kong vs. Godzilla. So this sort of guy who was just in the industry that never really got to do much, who had his one shot and it went away. Like now it's like his redemption arc.
Which will show you how hardcore fans are, because you get involved in a project that flops and you stick around for 20, 30 years.
People still know who you are just because you wrote a draft of it. It's like Freddy vs. Jason, where there's like 9 versions of that screenplay, like for years before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was every fanboy's weird fan fiction since, the first Freddy movie.
Yeah. Well, I read that like before they did 7, is that the one with the psychic? Like it was basically Carrie.
Carrie versus Jason, yeah. That's
the
first like Kane Hodder one.
That came about because that's when they first started talking about doing Freddy vs. Jason, and like they finally got Paramount and New Line in a room together, and neither of them would concede distribution for the movie. So then I guess Paramount was like, well, we have Carrie, don't we? or we could at least rip Carrie off. So we'll just do that versus movie. So that was like trying to satiate the fans' appetite for a versus film. But
the craziest of how that's a logical thing now. Like before, I don't know, 98 or so, before 2000, in fact, before Alien vs. Predator happened, the very concept of a North American movie mixing franchises directly, like and fairly, and companies doing it, like the concept that Sony and Disney are still at odds, but they're doing it together, doing stuff together because it works.
Yeah.
That didn't even seem fathomable. Like they would never agree to that back in the day.
Well, like Alien vs. Predator would not have gotten the green light. I think it was like within the year of Freddy vs. Jason becoming a big box office success that they finally greenlit Alien vs. Predator, even though I think Dark Horse had been doing the comics
since like the early 90s.
Yeah, which were awesome. And then was there a video game?
Yep.
Am I thinking of, there was like a Terminator versus RoboCop?
Yeah, which is based off the comic book series that happened. Yeah. Which was just really reissuing of like the early RoboCop game and changing the people into
Yeah.
Terminators, but it's still cool.
They tricked me. I was like, Terminator, RoboCop. I definitely had that game.
I remember because the cover of the game for Super Nintendo was done off the issue 1 of the comic book. So it was this idea that wait, a comic book inspired an actual game, and then to think that later they would constantly inspire movies, even if it was a comic book based off a project already. Like, which just shows it depends what's selling at the time. And in the 90s, comic books were like forever. There was I only have a couple of issues, but like Art Adams did an amazing Godzilla at that time. He had this really cool, like puffy cat face looking Godzilla. That was drawn at the time. But his art was just so fun that even when you think that wasn't the Godzilla I knew, he looked like he had whiskers almost. But it still looked cool.
I think there's like a trade or a compendium now of like all those Marvel Godzilla comics, but it's like super expensive. I don't know if it went out of print or what. I went to go buy it and I was like, I can't justify this.
I got pieces of it. They were all slightly beat up, but someone gave me like probably in 2019, just at one of my Geek Swap events, just gave me a stack.
Yeah.
Which makes me remember of the Hanna-Barbera cartoon where Godzilla is like super, super huge, like way bigger than he is in any of the movies.
Yeah.
And he always fights a robot in every movie. So there's always a robot that's like up to the clouds where it's like, where did you find that much metal?
I bet that's where we find our dinosaur robot that we're not thinking of.
That there's the one
in that
cartoon
somewhere.
They think there's a second Godzilla, and then they pull off the skin, and it's actually just a Mecha Godzilla, which is what inspired the movie. As if that's what the new movie's going to do. That's the whole thing about Godzilla or any of the Power Rangers thing. Where do you get that much metal? Who the hell made that? Like,
I just have to show off this trade. This is a really good series. That guy James Stocco, he did that weird Avengers anniversary thing, like where it was like an alternate timeline. Did you read that?
I don't think so. I mean, there's so many alternate timeline things.
Yeah, but
that's fairly recent, right? Like that's last 10 years of that thing that came.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he does it really. Godzilla Goes to Hell.
Godzilla Goes to Hell is awesome. I have a couple of issues of that. I want to get the trade, but this guy's art's cool because he does that like gradient thing where the colors, like,
oh yeah, and it's a
kind of like blend from like purple to pink as they go down and stuff like that, and it's always these kind of like psychedelic colors, and it's like ultra detailed like line work. But this comic is awesome because it's like this soldier and it's like his entire life, the half-century war. So it's like him growing up in the Godzilla war, and like it's basically this dude's whole life story, but the backdrop are like all these different kaiju.
Do we consider that how old Godzilla then has to be? Because well, again, some of them have done. Oh, there we go.
Now that we're talking about Mechagodzilla, I just had to show that art because it's pretty sweet.
I'm having Gatling guns on his shoulder. It's also such a 90s image to have Gatling guns on things.
Yeah, everything just is covered in guns.
Yeah.
Which that the Zoid that you're talking about, we forgot to mention that it just has like an outrageous amount of cannons on it.
As I said, that it was basically the Zoids is the Digimon, where Transformers must be the Pokemon. Then,
yeah,
it was just like it was just a normal generic thing, but just add guns and you're fine.
Yeah, and like the way that the Zoids went together sort of reminded me of like Bionicle or something.
Yeah, oh for sure.
I'm like constantly afraid that I'm going to break it or like I'm going to lose pieces of it because they just barely clip on.
Because you'd have like a shield just over their hip, and that piece would snap off, and it'd be
yeah.
fine.
But the cool thing about that is if like your friends had Zoids too, like you could have them fight and like knock pieces off and damage each other.
At least you can hopefully put them back on. Yeah, unless the little tiny nibs broke off of them, and then you're like, oh, just a piece of useless plastic now. Unlike many of the Transformers, because luckily the Transformers would fairly fold into each other. I don't think I have any that I would had flims. Oh yeah, I did. I recently got from someone at a Geek Swap event an old bug, and then I folded it too hard, and the bug's antennas and arm broke off like in my hands. I was like, I'm too strong. But one of the only like original Transformers that I still have leads me to the next dinosaur. It's Grimlock.
Nice.
the bad boy of the Autobots. Their Hulk, because he talk like me, Grimlock.
Yeah.
I'm not too smart, but I know better than you, puny human.
It's like vaguely Russian.
Yeah.
He's like the
weird.
lackey to some Russian mob boss. That's what he's like. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want I should smash him up, boss?
Yeah, boss, you want me break him? I turn into dinosaur, I bite him.
Plus, Grimlock's got to be like one of the coolest names.
Yeah.
And it suits him.
Skyscream and Grimlock. Those are like horror sounding names.
They're both like metal bands. I feel like I want both of those names in like a black metal font on a t-shirt.
Well, I mean, there's definitely like when the Constructicons put together, they became Devastator, and there's a Devastator. But technically very metal. But outside one of the other Dinobots, the only ones I used to have two more, but those are what happens when you buy toys in the 80s. But only one I have originally from the 80s is still Grimlock, because no one could touch him. But I had Swoop and Sludge, those are names so not cool on level of Grimlock. Sludge was the Stegosaurus, so you had the little fins, the mini fins across.
They're like the Stinkor of the Transformers universe.
Kinda. But when you really think about it, sludge is extremely metal. The amount of sludge doom metal that I listen to and stuff like that, the people use that word. But it doesn't, when you think about it out of context, you're like, so is he gross? Why is he called sludge? Is he just slime things? And no, he's just a dinosaur. And Swoop's pretty obvious. Swoop was the pterodactyl, so I mean.
There you go. Yeah.
That's one of the ones where when transforming it, I broke, because the wings were really thin. So when you folded them over, or if you tried to fold them too far, you could snap it off. And I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. But Grimlock is a super solid toy and pretty unbreakable. Hang on a second. I'll cut the blank out of there. I'm going to put pictures on the screen while we do stuff, but I'm just going to go get my Grimlock.
Cool. Yeah.
Since you have all your toys out here.
So I don't know if Adam can hear me right now, but when he gets back, I'm going to ask him to explain to me the origin story or mythology of the Dinobots, because I'm kind of unclear. I vaguely remember the way that they did it in the Michael Bay universe, but
talking about Michael Bay while I'm away.
Yeah, I was just saying. I was going to ask you about the origin or the mythology of the Dinobots within the cartoon. Did they appear? Was the movie? Was that their debut, or were they already a part of it? Okay.
No, they're from the first season. They're from G1.
Okay. They did a pretty good job in the movie of sort of it felt like an introduction, but I guess that's just the way that they had them come in. They
came in near the end of let me be real nerd about it then. And for anyone who knows better than me, who may watch this, leave in the comments and tell me how wrong I am and how much I don't remember it properly. But midpoint first season, Wheeljack creates them, but he's going to build them out of what he has, as opposed to having the Allspark to bring them to life. So he makes brains for them, and they're not very good, which alludes to how dinosaurs don't have
Grimlock.
Yeah. Right. And explains why the rest of them that way. And they're violent. And when they transform, they get really large. So every time he puts them together, they attack the bad guys, but then they attack them too. So he...
Wild card.
Yeah, so he takes them apart, and he says, that's it, I can't use them anymore. And it's not till many episodes later that he comes out and goes, oh, by the way, I figured out how to upgrade them. And instead of being violent, they're just instead, so they become a humorous character, so they don't really become part of the show until near the end of that very long first season, which is why when the movie came out, they were still the cool selling toy. So they were we still got to use these guys.
Well, that's got to be, what year was the movie? Because that's got to be right around the dino craze was sort of in its infancy.
86, I'm thinking.
Yeah, because by early 90s, it was in the full swing of Dino Madness.
Yeah, Transformers was done. A lot of people forget that the show went on after the movie, but I mean, it did, and it
just
not as memorable. Yeah, there was a lot more episodes in Japan than there were here, which is really weird. So some of them didn't get translated. So during the next season, there's just missing episodes. and it seems
that's
very
weird.
weird.
Yeah. So they were more like they became the comic relief. They started off sort of more like villains.
Right. Yeah, they were. I mean, they were like the Hulk.
That's
It
cool.
was like, this is a good guy,
Yeah.
but he's too dangerous. And then, once you stuck the Hulk around for a while, you had to be like, well, now he has to learn how to do dumb things too.
I can't remember what they did in the live action movie with the Dinobots, but I feel like it was like they tried to tie it in like
They made them ginormous. Like, if you think of how big they had to be, they had to be Godzilla size. If Optimus Prime rides Grimlock around, so the size that he is, and this thing is like a giant dragon for him.
Yeah. And they definitely changed the origin. I think they try to make them actually prehistoric. Because the one that I haven't seen, I think, is the last one where it's like they tie it into the Knights of the Round Table and the ancient history of the Transformers.
I haven't even. I mean, I kind of want to.
I'm like a little morbidly curious, but I don't want to watch it by myself. Yeah. I'm not that depressed yet. I'm getting there, but
those are movies I'm not using to catch up on during pandemic, because I think it's fun to watch one of them with a friend and be like, wow, that's really dumb, but still have fun with it. But I don't think
we called the last one Gunface the Motion Picture, and we were like, his face turns into a gun. So like I just like convinced a bunch of my friends to go see that movie opening night, and we just laughed our asses off the whole time. It was really fun because there's that scene where the car like ramps in slow motion, and then there's like a guy with a gun, like some goon, and he gets like hit in the face with the bottom tire of the car in slow motion. And I was like, that's the American excess that that we pride ourselves on.
Oh, waiting for Fast and the Furious to transform. Like,
once they go into space.
Yeah, I mean, and it will happen.
Yeah,
I mean, they should cross over with Street Sharks, since Vin Diesel has so much history with the Street Sharks.
Yeah, he's a fan, right?
Yeah, well, he made those original commercials when he was like a starting out actor.
That's right.
That video that's him showing investors that they should sell them in their stores. To move away from that to end the Transformers concept, I'm just going to show you another toy that was in my collection. This is Crusher. I can't think of it from the GoBots. So pretty easy transform.
Change robot.
Yeah. Oh wow, their legs are stuck. Oh no, it is broken. But I broke it. Whatever. It's just stuck. I can fix it later.
It'll pop out on its own when you least expect it.
It was the one in the cartoon, the GoBots. It was the evil female. It was kind of the Baroness or Evil Lynn of the group, and it had, when it transformed, its face had really big lipstick for its mouth, and it talked like this. So it seemed more like it was like the drag queen of the robots, because it just had this really throaty voice.
It had like a Dr. Girlfriend sort of voice.
In every way, because it was obviously an early cartoon voice actor trying to be evil, but it had massive eyebrows and huge lips, because that was, how else do we emphasize that this robot is female? So
GoBot.
You GoBot. There we go. Popped it back in. So I wanted to open it up because when I saw this I did a trade, like Geek Swap again, I was like, oh, I need to know, what does that toy look like in the toy? Because I never seen it around. When I look at the face for this, it's no face at all. It's just a red line.
Just a visor, yeah.
Yeah. So
I guess
there was no personality to the toys, especially because they were a Japanese toy line that had been renamed in that. But I was kind of let down. I was like, oh, it had such a personality in the cartoon, and like the toy is nothing. Which means if Zoids is the Digimon and Pokemon is the Transformers, GoBots has to be like the Monster Rancher. Not even Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like the Monster Rancher.
Monster Rancher.
That nobody wants to talk about.
Yeah.
So
it's the hierarchy of robots.
Everything we talked about led into a lead way to the next one. But what was one of the other movie type ones that were on your list? Okay,
I've got one other film, and I'll preface this by saying I might have talked about this before with you on a previous episode. I don't know, but when you're a kid and you think every movie's good because you just you assume that the adults know better than you, and you haven't seen anything super egregious yet. Like the first cognitive dissonance I can remember having in my life is when my grandma came home from Blockbuster and said, "Oh, you like dinosaurs, right? I got you 2 dinosaur films that you can watch tonight." And those 2 films were Theodore Rex and Tammy and the T-Rex.
All right.
And I'll never forget the sinking feeling of finishing Tammy and the T-Rex and being like, wait a second, like movies can be bad. But I kept trying to convince myself it was good because I didn't want to believe it. Because everything, I'd found something to be entertained by. But now, like in hindsight, it's like, yeah, the movie's crazy. I think what gave me the dissonance was like the weird tonal shifts of it and the fact that it was shot as a horror film, but then edited into a family film.
Which, I mean, only
Made it
recently the release
feel
has
so
finally
weird.
seen the gory extra
Yeah,
scenes,
I just watched it like this month for the first time.
which is
that
nowhere
was, like,
near as different.
everything came full circle.
Yeah, it does work. Like, I think it works and it makes it better.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near as like crazy as like when I had seen that movie many times. A lot of B movie nights would play it at different bars and events that my friends would do, and everyone talked about somewhere there's this crazy gory version where it's like really hardcore. People would tell that story and it would get weirder and weirder. Like,
Yeah, there's maybe like a couple shots, like 3 scenes or something that are like pretty brutal, but that's it.
I mean, what do you? There's a flattened person in there in the normal cut. It's pretty weird and nasty too. But the story would be the rumor of this cut was like, and at one point Tammy just like fucks the robot dinosaur like full on sexy.
That's what we all wanted to see.
And then ninjas come in and he bites the heads off all the ninjas and spits them out. It's just arterial spray from their heads forever, and like he's covered in blood, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't happen. But
yeah, that's probably another weird thing watching as a kid was like that weird sexual tension is still there. Like you can't edit that out of the movie.
Well, I mean,
I don't remember if her
dead boyfriend.
Yeah, I don't remember if her striptease thing was in the original cut or not at the end, where she pours the vodka or whatever it is like into the brain that's like in a bowl,
right? Well,
with like cables hooked up to like an old like Commodore or something.
But the scene is, I think that scene is longer in the next film release, and sensual. I mean, it's the same jokes we made about Howard the Duck.
Yeah.
And Howard the Duck was a duck. It wasn't the brain of her dead boyfriend in a duck. So,
but now that I have the context of like knowing more about the production of Tammy and the T-Rex, it like makes me really respect like what they were able to do with the amount of time that they had and the parameters.
It's also a thing that I've said on almost any bad movie podcast I've been involved with. When you're a kid, there's a level where when you're really, really young, you like stupid jokes and silly things. And so everything, even if it was bad, seems good. Then you start to become close to a teenager and you start to analyze things for the first time. So dad jokes, not funny. They're not funny because that's what your dad used to do. He's dumb. You want, I gotta find the smart jokes. I gotta find what they are because it can't be these little kid jokes I've always done. So say you're like 13.
Plus then you have like this craving for superiority over something.
Exactly. So you want to be able
you're
to
old enough to start competing with your parents over who gets to say what you can do and stuff.
So dumb things that are funny are just not funny at all. And then at some point you start to get a little bit older and more comfortable with yourself. And you're like, wait, dad jokes are funny again, even without becoming a dad. You're just like, oh, there's So after a temporal disruption in the timeline of the universe of Riot of the movies, something Dr. Tug Millie will have to look into, we are back. When talking about Tammy the T-Rex, it just exploded the internet. Tammy the T-Rex.
I had no idea that that Tug Millie was Doug Tilley. And I've listened to their podcast before. So I just when I was listening to the commentary or whatever bonus feature that was on the Blu-ray, I was like, oh my god, yeah, they're the guys who. I think I listened to like after I watched Suburban Sasquatch, I listened to their podcast because it was one of the few podcasts that had an episode about
it. In PSI 2, the evil clown that shows up is called Mo Porno the Clown.
Yeah, Mo Porn. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's like the co-host, right? The other guy.
Yeah. So
that's hilarious.
It's a funny story within that, which I tell a lot. One of the first times I ever actually met Doug in person, we were talking about that and saying how it was funny how it was named after him. And then I said that I got a random message from him that he wanted me to call it Tug Millie because of someone that mispronounced his name once. And he looked at me and he said, "You dreamed that. I never said that." And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you told me you were going to homage a name after me in it, and you homaged that character." And that's the end of the conversation. I'm like, no, there was more to that conversation. There's a reason I call him that. And he's like, no, there's not. You just made that up. And I'm like, did I? And when I asked Justin about it, because he was there at that time, and he's like, yeah, you just said that's what the name's going to be, and you thought that was hilarious. And Justin said to me, I thought it was a masturbation joke. And I'm like, no, Tug Millie's not a masturbation joke. I guess I just made up a funny word, and I thought Tug sounded like a name.
Yeah, it's like a tugboat. Yeah.
Yeah. And part 2, we realized it stands for what was Tugland.
It's short for Tugland.
To say my name is Tugland P. Millie, which
that's amazing.
I don't know if America would have ever got it. There was that comes stolen from a cartoon up here in Canada called Sons of Butcher, which was a band. Nah, it doesn't really translate well to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
The cartoon was there was an actual band called that, and they superimposed their faces on cartoon bodies that look kind of like South Park, but it was photos of their face that would move as they talked. Super uncomfortable and weird. And really rude. Yeah. It was like a late night cartoon that could swear and all that stuff. But one of the guys was called Doug as well in that. And at one point you'd realize that his name is Dougland. It's not Douglas, it's Dougland.
Dougland,
and, yeah. So that stuck with me for forever. And that's and they had a line where when Doug would do something weird, his friend Sal would go, "That's effed." And so in PSI 2, after I introduced myself as Tugland W. Millie or whatever, seconds later, that's when Bob goes, "You guys are effed."
Okay, yeah.
I just been watching that cartoon for too long, and all of a sudden I realized I had subconsciously wrote it into the script. But
it's
so
just references.
There was actually a script. Yeah, references that no one would get. So I feel like
I just love alternate long versions of names, like Jimothy. Yeah.
Bimmy and Jimmy from Double Dragon 2.
Yeah, Bimmy. Yeah.
My sense of humor of that weirds out my girlfriend every time because we don't anymore. I think we're just kind of done with the show, but for like the first 4 or 5 seasons, we watched The Flash pretty religiously.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
At the beginning of every episode, he says, "My name is Barry Allen," and I respond by saying, "My name is Bertrude Allen." And there's no reason why there's no joke to it. So to this day, we'll be like, "What are you getting at when you say that?" Every time we watch it, and I'm like, "Nothing. It's just like."
That's a
yeah. What does Barry stand for? Bartholomew? That's already a weird word. So no, it's Bertrude. What? Yeah, because
we have a cat, Coke. His name is, and it's like short for Coco. And I call him Coke-tholomew all the time, and I just laugh to myself. Yeah.
I think like every cat knows it has 7 different versions of its name.
Oh yeah.
So
my cat's been through many iterations.
Because
I have a cat named Ophelia, and then I started calling her Ophi, and then that became Trophy, and then it became Trophelia, and then it became Topher Grace, and then it became TV's Eric Foreman.
The last dog I had, I used to have a chow chow called Luca, and through a very weird change of that, his name became Rooster Oven. And I don't even remember how it did that. It became weird plays off of his name and changed.
It's fun to reverse engineer how you got to that.
But he was able to respond to it, like either name he knew it was him.
My dog Joey became Hoagie.
Yeah, and at least that sounds the same.
Hoagie's a good name for a dog, I think.
Unless you're planning on eating your dog.
Then it's even better.
Wait, that's a American and Canadian thing. Hoagies, aren't they?
Yeah, we got hoagies.
Right. Sometimes I forget. I don't. It's not something you hear people talk about much anymore. I'm eating a hoagie.
It's fun to say though. Hoagie.
Hoagie.
Yeah, or hoagie. If you're from Philly.
Yeah.
Hoagie.
The only place where the Philly cheesesteak is called the Us cheesesteak. I did ask that to a guy once, and he's like, "No, we still call it that." And I'm like, "Oh, that feels weird." I guess because French people don't call French fries French fries.
We've got Cincinnati chili, which other people call water. It's just like
And it's-
super watered down. And like there's the two big chains, Skyline and Gold Star. And one of them uses chocolate as the secret ingredient, and the other one it's cinnamon.
None of that sounds right.
I know it doesn't sound right, but I guess it's because I grew up with it, but I love this stuff. But
Now I'm
but
gonna
the
have
thing
to
is,
try.
you put so much cheese on it that you can barely tell anyway.
Well,
Like
yeah, it's
you
just
order a
melted cheese.
three-way, which is noodles and chili and cheese, and then like the cheese is like that.
I mean, my bowels can't handle that, but I do now want to eat that. So
Oh, it's great. Yeah. My friends say I have an iron chud stomach. Because one time we ate Taco Bell early in the morning, and then later in the afternoon we went and got White Castle, and then we went to Kings Island, which is our theme park near where I live. And I went and rode a bunch of rides, and I had no problems. And that's when I knew that I was a freak of nature and something was terribly wrong with me.
oh, I used to be that. My body doesn't do that anymore. So
Yeah, it's gonna catch
live
up
it up
with
while
me.
you can. Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of things that are gross and disgusting, and we regret sometimes, we were talking about Tammy the T-Rex.
Yeah.
You mentioned when you first watched that as a kid. My point being that like it seemed terrible then. Later on in life, you enjoy it for the silliness. Then that cooler cut came out, and it seemed to make more sense. But
Yeah.
when you first watched it, you also watched Theodore Rex. I bet that doesn't seem any better to this day.
No, it doesn't.
I have two
I
VHS
think-
copies of it. I always keep a second one around so that if someone really annoys me, I'll leave it at their house.
Well, there's always that weird like aspect where it's like Whoopi Goldberg did that in a state of desperation and then won an Oscar and then tried to get it pulled. And I'm like, where do
I
you
mean-
like you committed to the movie. You made the movie. Like you can't bury it because you're now suddenly have your career back. That's not how it works.
I mean, people do it all the time. And fucking Jim Carrey with Kick-Ass 2 and shit like that. Like him protesting his own movie.
I'm afraid to connect to the better Wi-Fi now because once it's gonna have to. It says your internet connection is unstable. Well, we'll just hope for the
I
best.
usually get that message. I haven't got it this time. I'm shocked.
But still, like I'm just how unintelligible the story is in Theodore Rex because they try to like set up the universe by having this. I don't know. I can barely talk about it because I haven't watched it in a while. But like
It's sort of Dick Tracy, but
yeah.
as if it's also Fish Police, if you have any memory of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's just like you ask so many questions right out of the gate. And sometimes, if a movie presents this totally unique universe and you're like, this is clearly totally removed from our world, so I'm not supposed to question it. I'll just roll with it.
Yeah.
But you don't really know that that's the case in Theodore Rex. You're like, is this our Earth, but in the far future? Or is this in an alternate timeline?
Where dinosaurs have like always existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of try to explain it. Yeah, I think it's sort of like the Dino Hatton and Super Mario Brothers, maybe.
Yeah. I feel like there might have even been a really short little cartoon explanation at one point in the movie, not unlike your movie.
Yeah, that's probably where my deep-seated trauma of repressed memories that came from the film.
Maybe the sequel needs a buddy cop movie in there.
Well, I love the animated intro to the Super Mario Brothers movie.
Yeah.
Where
Which
it's,
again does the same thing to be like, so we can explain to you that it's not like the game, nor is it like Earth either. So
yeah, the super morbid nerd in me wants to kind of go back and watch Theodore Rex now to see if I can make heads or tails of the mythology, and then make a video explaining it to people so they don't have to watch it.
there's a million like kids movies that were released like around that time too, but they're like low budget, like Full Moon spin-off Torchlight thing did a whole bunch of the mini dinosaurs, the Prehysteria.
I mean, Prehysteria rolled. I loved that movie.
I've only seen 1 and 2, and I know there's like 3 more
Yeah.
after that, but
I've only seen the first two.
there's one I think that's called like Dino Kingdom or something, and the cover has this really cool thing where there's 2 like badass dinosaurs with sunglasses and leather jackets doing this, and the one kid leaning back doing that, and it's it had a Super Nintendo game, and
I have a
finally
bunch of
saw it,
issues.
so.
I just got. Let me see if I can. They might just be on the top of my comic pile over here because they're new.
so
Sorry.
Dinosaurs for Hire.
Yes.
Mhm.
I have a box of Dinosaurs for Hire. This was a birthday gift or a Christmas gift from my friend Miguel.
When we were originally going to do this as just a dinosaur episode, I wasn't
You
sure
were
about
gonna,
mixing the two. I was going to do a whole thing about that because, yeah, again, one of those things where the comic book was amazing, but pretty forgotten because it was from that Malibu era that like
yeah,
got
this is
dumped
the
on by Image.
Malibu
Yeah,
logo there. It's
yep.
parody enhanced cover. So it's
There it is.
Jurassic Jerk. Yeah, which
But it
is
had a
totally
Super Nintendo game too.
like I loved the game. I don't know how playable it is if I were to go back, but just the graphics, like the designs were really cool in it.
It's like a cheap Contra, like many
Yeah.
other of the. It's kind of like the RoboCop versus Terminator game.
I
But
think
you
at the
fought-
time though, it's like I can only play Contra if I went to like Pizza Hut. So like to have something similar on my home console was amazing. Yeah, I mean
that's
some of
good.
the art when they do like the film noir style.
Mhm. Oh, it was a super smart comic, and of course, then those millions of other cartoons came out in the wave of Ninja Turtle ripoffs, like DINOSAURS, and that original issue, that original Malibu comic cover is amazing. I love that as a poster.
Yeah, issue
Um,
1.
But then, like Extreme Dinosaurs, the spin-off from Street Sharks, which is fundamentally exactly that show, but nothing like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like the first like 2 or 3 are like they all have like these sort of oil painted looking super badass covers.
In recent years, there's been a comic book called Elephant Man. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Yeah.
It's a actual sci-fi noir about human animals. So it's mainly about a detective hippo. The rest of the world, it's a real world, but like a whole species of these giant animal people, like an elephant man, a hippo man, a giraffe man. They were all created by some evil scientists to be weapons, but they discovered they were now intelligent like humans. So legally, they got the right to live amongst people. So now they have like normal jobs.
What is this? It's called Animal Man?
Elephant Man.
Elephant Man, okay.
Yeah.
I know there's an Animal Man too. I have some issues of that.
Oh, Animal Man's a classic.
But that's like a Vertigo one, right? Or like one of those like
well, the good stuff.
comics
was
with an
Vertigo.
X, but like
Yeah.
more mainstream, like released
He was a
under.
Justice League member. I mean, he's Animal
Oh,
Man.
cool.
He's several times been a member of the Justice League. It's just
Yeah.
the Vertigo title was the cool one because that was the like.
I haven't read them yet, but the cover art for those are like pretty sweet looking.
That's during that like really psychedelic Doom Patrol era too. That yeah, Grant Morrison was working on both of those, and yeah, that was when comic books all of a sudden were cool to be a 19-year-old and still read comics because you could tell everyone, no man, Grant Morrison is like really smart. Like I read Sandman, I read Hellblazer, and I read Animal Man. But then you explain Animal Man to somebody, and they're like, that still sounds stupid. And like, well, in concept, it's stupid, but like you gotta read it, man. That was definitely me at 19.
There was like the crazy like New Mutants covers that came out in like I guess it was the early 90s or late 80s that were all like super trippy looking. There was like Bill S that did like this sort of like Ralph Steadman looking.
During like the when Warlock was on the team, because that
Yeah.
weird amalgam, like warping black.
They always
and
had those
gold
like sort of
characters.
splashes of ink and stuff and like sort of look like watercolor.
So again, moving away from the robots, I guess that's on to my last one. My last one is, and you won't see it because I'll edit up a bunch of pictures on the screen of this. It is the Tyrannosaurus, but spelt more like tyranny. Tyrannosaurus Rex from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, the original 80s wave, just when the show was ending, when they were gonna like spin off into a prehistoric era.
To catch the tail end of that dinosaur wave. Well, I guess it would have been like right at the crux of it, right?
Yeah, it would have
Yeah.
been at that point. She-Ra was happening, and there's that debate that when all of a sudden everybody's little sister was having She-Ra toys, it made the boys not want to buy the He-Man toys anymore. Be that true or not, He-Man eventually phased out.
Sounds like a scapegoat to me.
Yeah,
That's about how long the cycle usually lasts of like a mega popular thing. And
exactly.
then the nostalgia comes and it's like, oh yeah, you remember Ninja Turtles? Now they're live action.
And I mean, as we know with all of those, including He-Man, they always come back. But the great thing about these dinosaur toys, so this is I mean, this is He-Man logic. I mean, they're barbarians, yet they're also the future. So you already know that that's weird. How it's like the past and the future at the same time.
That's what I love about it.
Yeah.
That like prehistoric sci-fi angle, which obviously I love that because that's my movie too. But I don't have enough people in loincloths with swords yet. Yeah.
Yeah, Yor is great.
Yeah. That's awesome.
The best part about Yor, though, is that he's a caveman kind of guy who discovers he's actually in the future, and at the end it's aliens. It's not like
a
he's
Planet of the Apes sort of scenario.
Yeah. He doesn't just have like a laser gun and fuzzy underwear. He can't fly a plane, but lives in a mud hut. Like that's what a lot of some of the other characters could do. And He-Man didn't question it. Like He-Man had teleportation devices, but like everything was made out of like crumbling brick, and they didn't wear pants. And like certain people were savage and certain people were not, and they were just like, nah, whatever.
Yeah.
But when they travel at the end of the toy line, the last couple of toys, the little comic books that came in it, and I'm gonna flash some of them on the screen while we do this. He-Man gets warped into the past, and he discovers when Grayskull was first built.
It's like Army of Darkness, but He-Man.
Yeah, and it's the time of the dinosaurs. But in their world, their dinosaurs were robotic with no explanation why. They just were. They had obviously like joints that had wheels in their shoulders and their.
Did they sort of look like suits of armor, like clockwork or something, or they're just
they just look like
robots?
They just look like the toy. Like that, it was like someone showed the toy and there was obvious joints visible in them. They were supposed to be dinosaurs, but when they drew them with the joints. So they're just like, yep, that's what they look like. And the Tyrannosaurus that Skeletor would discover could open up its stomach and shoot out a buzzsaw and a giant buzz.
As soon as he said open up his stomach, I just thought of Inhumanoids.
Yeah, and I mean, this would be about the time that these larger toys were being made.
What is it, Decompose? Is that the name of the one?
The skeleton he put you in this chest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He's awesome.
So this giant purple, hilariously, a giant purple T-Rex.
Is this pre-Barney or?
This is pre-Barney. Yeah. No, it'd be funny, and who could shoot a buzzsaw blade out of his chest?
Like Gigan.
Yeah, imagine if that's what inspired Barney. They're like, nobody remembers that toy because the toy existed. It was made. He-Man had a Triceratops, a big green Triceratops he could ride.
That's the replacement Battle Cat.
Right. Exactly. Which didn't really do anything. And I think it had an even limited run. Like you can find people who have the T-Rex toy, but not many of them. But I'm also going to post up on the screen, so you'll have to rewatch this after the edit because this photo is great. It's from a magazine. The wave of those Masters of the Universes were only made in Italy. Some of them, some of the figures from that set were made here. Even cheesier, when He-Man goes back to that time, he meets a character called Hero, who he realizes his name is inspired from the past. Is HE_RO. And he meets a wizard called Eldor, who's this bearded wizard who like was original guardian of the of Castle Grayskull. But they also made.
Oh, that's pretty cool. They expanded the lore of Castle Grayskull.
Yeah,
and that's what it was established, or did they just kind of like?
No, like I mean, it was just and then the 1000
really
series made a different background for it. But one of the toys that was never made, there were like some giants on that world that were made, and those toys existed, but like a Titanus guy and an ogre version giant that were made that you can only get in Italy. So the boxes are only written in Italian on it. The T-Rex, you can get them in English. And then they made this massive set that was supposed to be the hero's kingdom at that point. It was so expensive to buy that's like in the production for it was cost so much that's why they kind of gave up the whole series. But one of them in this production shot is a giant Brontosaurus that looks so dumb because it's huge. Like the toy is obviously this big. It just looks like a plastic dollar store Brontosaurus, but its chest also opens up. And He-Man comes out with a Gatling gun and shoots things. So it opens up and it's big enough to hold your He-Man in there with a gun turret. So this Brontosaurus is walking by with He-Man going, ah! And I'll send you that photo, but you'll also see it. It'll flash up on the screen while we're talking about it.
Yeah. You cut up for a second, then all of a sudden it's cut to you going.
It's just being like,
and his chest open and He-Man pops out. I was like, I missed a bit, but I think I caught the important part of that.
Brontosaurus, He-Man in his chest, gun turret going, ah.
Man, that's one of those ideas where you hear it and you're just immediately pissed off you didn't think of it first. But I guess it's so obscure that no one's going to know if I were to use it.
Right.
For something.
Yeah. I mean, with all those robots, well, I mean, at that time too, Dino Riders was happening. And that's basically that.
Dino Riders was awesome. I had one of those like jigsaw puzzles. I actually had never seen the cartoon, but my parents got me this jigsaw puzzle. They're like, this looks like something you would like. I was like, yeah, it is. People riding dinosaurs with armor on them, shooting laser guns. Yeah.
Again, looking like Digimon dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Have you watched the cartoon since then?
I've watched some clips on YouTube. I need to like find full episodes and sit down and watch a couple of them. Like that's what I did with Inhumanoids. It's like I would watch clips for like on and off every now and then for like a year, and then I went and downloaded they did the movie that was like the first 3 episodes edited together.
I mean, there's only like 10 episodes in total.
Yeah, so I ended up watching like that whole series, and then a bunch of most of Sectars, which is sort of the same way. It sort of got like the pilot movie treatment.
If you find the pilot movie of Dino Riders, you're good after that, because the animation drops a whole bit. Like the pilot is the first 3 episodes, and then all of a sudden episode 4, it's like with a computer graphic thing, you haven't finished the last render. All of a sudden, like there's half the colors, the mouths don't quite move in sync anymore. They know what people's hair is just solid; it doesn't move anymore. It's like, yeah, we sold it. We got the toy sold. We got a contract to get 12 more episodes out. We're just gonna half-ass it till it's done.
Yeah.
But the first 3 episodes as a edited pilot are great. But after that,
I'll have to watch that.
Yeah. So if you can't find anything more after that, you're fine.
Well, it's like my friend just messaged me. He's like, have you ever seen the sitcom Aliens in the Family? And I was like, I've been trying to watch that ever since I heard of it. And then I went on YouTube, and apparently like 2 years ago, someone posted the first 2 episodes in their entirety, and I had never seen them. So now like, I'm like, man, I just stopped looking, and then they popped up. So I'm gonna have to watch this. He's like, well, it's not really good, but if you've been wanting to watch, he said like it's worth watching because it's like it's kind of so bad it's funny. But
I started at the beginning of the pandemic going through so many sitcoms. Someone had posted the Harry and the Hendersons TV series on YouTube.
I've seen like the first episode of that.
I got into a couple episodes and I'm like, oh, this is getting so bad. It's getting worse. And then whoever had uploaded them got hit by YouTube and they're all gone. So I'm like, oh, good. Now I don't have to. Now I can't watch the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I never got to see the wrestling episode where he becomes a luchador and he has a match against Hacksaw Jim Duggan.
Oh my God. Wrestling Harry.
Yeah.
I want to see that.
He's got a big red mask on, but otherwise he's just really hairy and no one questions. He's just a really big guy.
The aliens look amazing, though. I skimmed the Aliens of the Family pilot episode today, and it's sort of like, I think the Jim Henson Company. It was a Michael Jacobs production who did produce Dinosaurs.
I've only seen photos of it. I've never actually seen the
you
show
should
either.
check it out because the animatronic aliens are pretty impressive. They look great. I mean, it's pretty much like dinosaurs, but with aliens.
Yeah.
And I think the technology had even gotten slightly better by then. So like they look a little even like an even.
Oh, when we lost Jordan, he froze again at the end.
Like Baby Sinclair was.
Oh, you were cutting out super bad there, but we were talking about Baby Sinclair.
Yeah.
My fear that it would be like the American Masked Rider series, where all of a sudden he was just an alien living with a sitcom family.
Now I'm connected to the good Wi-Fi. It worked. I think we're good now. Sorry, what were you just saying before?
I just said, when you hear a title that's like a sitcom, like Aliens in the Family, it gives me nightmares of the American Kamen Rider, Masked Rider from the 90s.
Oh my God, yeah.
Where he's an alien who lives with a sitcom family.
So he's like Tokusatsu Alf.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Gordon Shumway.
he turns it because he's not always in the Kamen Rider costume, but he's supposed to be from another planet of bug warriors.
Doesn't he have like a wacky sidekick?
Yeah, he's like a duck.
Yeah.
A furry duck. Who at one point gets a magical power that makes him giant and he attacks the city as a kaiju.
I sort of remember him being like an Orko type.
He's called Furbus because I think the Furbies had just
That's
come
it,
out.
yeah.
And he's just this furry duck Orko kind of guy that Tonto Boss. Because
Yeah, my friend Miguel was talking
music.
about it. He's like, I'm pretty sure Furby stole that from them. I was like,
Or
"I'll have to
vice
go look
versa,
and
yeah.
see."
There's,
Yeah.
I'm sure it can't be coincidence. It's too damn
There's
close.
no way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the last one, you get the last one. What was the third one on your list?
Okay, so I was thinking robot dinosaur, and we were doing a lot of fictional examples, and there was only one real life example I could think of, which is Truckosaurus. But I mean, technically, Truckosaurus is the Simpsons animated parody of the real life phenomenon of Demolition Derby, slightly animated robot dinosaurs. But then I was looking, and like there was a bunch of uploads of Robosaurus, but like with the name Truckosaurus, and then a couple comments were saying like they changed the name to Truckosaurus later on because that's people just calling it Truckosaurus, even though it was Robosaurus. I don't know if any of that's true, but I ended up watching
one of those
it.
things where it's like you were obviously referencing us, so if we call it that, Simpsons, you can't sue us.
Yeah. But then I found out like he's like in an issue of Simpsons comics. There's an issue called Return of Truckosaurus, where Bart is helping Otto work on the school bus, and then he finds Truckosaurus tucked away somewhere in the auto shop or whatever. And
because you could just tuck that thing away.
Right? Yeah, and then he takes control of it. But then they in the episode, it's Bart the Daredevil, I think, is the one from like season 2 maybe, or season, I can't remember if it's season 1 or 2.
Super early, back when I still cared.
Yeah. But the guy who presents it says that he's like the creator of Truckosaurus. But then he appears in the Simpsons Hit and Run game, and they retcon it to say that it was Professor Frank who created Truckosaurus. I'm gonna go with the season 2 cameo. Yeah, there's a lot of that.
For those who don't know, it's a giant crane that looks like a dinosaur mouth, and it would pick up cars and sometimes crush them, and it blew out fire. It would set fire to cars. So when the Bigfoot cars were finished crushing and driving over stuff, he could eat them.
Yeah, which is pretty much what Robosaurus is in real life. Yeah. And then there were a bunch of offshoots of that under various different names. But there's one that was a Transformer Godzilla hybrid called Tranzilla.
Yeah.
And then there were a couple other ones that were basically they're all variations on that same idea.
I just love the concept that it's like, well, we got like Bigfoot trucks driving over other old cars. We got a bunch of like cars with hot rod engines that blow fire, and they jump over other cars and crash into things. But that's not crazy enough.
Yeah. Oh, Draco the Dragonator was the other one, which that's badass.
Which just sounds like Strong Bad, the
Trogdor the Burninator. Yeah. I'm sure they were aware of it. Yeah. No, but I was watching, I was like, this is the kind of showmanship we need nowadays. They put like it's always like Godzilla by Blue Oyster Cult, or like some like shitty Godsmack song or something comes on, and then like it does have like its truck form. Like they kind of try to make it like a truck, like a transformer.
Yeah,
it's like on hydraulics, so it basically is just like crouched over to look more like a car, and then it comes up. Yeah, actually, I forgot I set this up to do my.
Oh, I just happen to have an action figure of that too.
To show my this is. So I could give you an example. I have one of these reading lights that I put around my neck to read books in the dark, and I was like, these are the headlights for a Truckosaurus.
Right, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it starts down. Now my microphone's caught on it. It starts like this, you know. And then the announcer will like tell all the kids to tell Truckosaurus to wake up, or Robosaurus. And they'll all start chanting, wake up, and then you hear, it raises up like this. And then just when you think it can't get any more badass, you hear, and then it just breathes fire out of its face, and it starts rolling across. And then it picks up, it can't really eat the trucks, more just like kind of picks them up and holds them near its face. And then
and then drops them so it makes a mess. But it like lifts it up and kind of does this, so it seems like it's going.
Yeah.
And again, that's just my memory of it. The weirdest thing, and I should have looked this up beforehand. There is you can Google it. There's some video footage of it, and I think it might be online. There was a pilot to a TV series where a guy, when he falls asleep, he turns into that and he fights crime.
That's amazing.
And I don't know what it's called. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll put it in the comments for later. I should be prepared, and it never ends. But I went to this wave of watching like Lost Pilots, and that's when I saw Puchinsky for the first time.
Yeah, I was gonna say Puchinsky's the best one.
And there was some other one with like a samurai cop, and then it wasn't Samurai Cop. And then this one came up, and it has some recognizable actors in it from like.
I always think that Cop Rock is one of those, but then I forget that show had like an actual full season.
Yeah, that was one of like I think Fox TV's weirdest things or something. Like it was during that era of like anything could happen. Yeah, that goes in the memory with Fish Police.
But then like in season 29 they did Truckosaurus 2, which was like the son of Truckosaurus, and then it just immediately gets destroyed. But
any other show having enough trivia to say in season 29
we brought back this thing from season 2, and apparently there's another gag where there's Truckosaurus the movie, and there's the character's name is John Truckosaurus and is voiced by Marlon Brando.
Well, even that,
which I guess is sort of a parody of Orson Welles
as Unicron in the Transformers movie. Yeah,
I guess that's what they're trying to do, like this sort of a washed up former genius turned cartoon robot.
It's just, and then there's this cartoon robot doing commercials for champagne. It's the best French find. Cut, do it again. The giant robot smashes the bottle.
I couldn't believe, like, I knew the Transformers movie was cool, but I was like, well, I'm 30 now, so I'm going to see it for the first time. There's no way it's going to be as cool as I imagined it, and it totally was as cool as I imagined it. The movie's badass. It just gets that scale, that cosmic scale of these giant things floating in space, and then just the gravity of having like Leonard Nimoy, like,
and talking. Robot murder, like all the fucking way.
Yeah,
hound right in the face.
It's dark. Yeah, it's like the 90s, 1990 Ninja Turtle film, which I still say, nostalgia aside, is just a great movie. Like, if I saw that right now for the first time, I'd be like, solid gags, great chemistry between the turtles, like,
and they look good.
Like the way it's lit is, they knew what they were doing. It's
amazing how cheaper they got, especially part 3, and then you get to like super fancy CGI and how much worse it looks.
Yeah, I still.
There's so much going on. Anyway, going way off topic, we're going to talk about robot monsters, robot dinosaurs. I'm going to end it with one other thing. My bonus is a bonus mention.
Oh, we still have more left. Okay, yeah. I was just letting the tangent roll because I was like, I think we burned through them. Well,
to add into,
we could talk about that Ninja Turtles film another time.
Right, we'll have a whole Ninja Turtles 6.
I got a lot to say
that are great about the Ninja Turtles. We'll do a 6 slices of pizza.
They're all 6 of them are Krang.
Oh, Shredder! But the bonus other thing I just looked up and saw, and I'm like, oh man, this is what I was imagining Scooby-Doo should have been fighting. There's an issue of issue 31, I believe, of the Thing comic book, when the Thing was on his solo intergalactic wrestling and movie career, where he wore like a black wrestling outfit in it. It was a really actually cool time in the late 80s of that comic book.
He was traveling through space.
Yeah, like after Secret Wars, he stayed there and he left the team. And then when he got back,
this predates Hulk in space, or
yes, it is. Yeah,
cool. I guess that was inspired by that, or they're like, let's just do that again.
It's like the series went on for quite a few issues, but it's this is a time period where comic books got the chance to do that. Like even if some issues didn't sell at all, they still kept going.
Yeah.
But that era of Thing, that he became a wrestler in space and then went to Earth and became a movie star and wrestler before he would rejoin the Fantastic Four. One of the movies he gets to work on as a stuntman is Devil Dinosaur, the movie. And since he's met Devil Dinosaur before, the big red dinosaur that had a monkey ride it.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, which had its own comic book as well. Devil Dinosaur existed.
Really?
It's Devil Dinosaur's back these days with Moon Girl. He now has like a human companion to make him more of a hero. And Devil Dinosaur also appeared in an issue of the Godzilla Marvel comic books. But in this issue, Devil Dinosaur isn't really in it. it's just a giant robot, and the Thing forgets that. So when the giant robot comes out, Thing beats the crap out of it and punches his face off. And he's like, "You just ruined $1 million robot. You're fired, Ben Grimm." He's like, "Oh, this is why my career isn't working out."
He's such a sad sack.
Out of like all of Marvel, the Thing's like one of my favorite characters because
he's great. Yeah,
he looks like he's such a superhero character, yet he's probably the least. He feels like he should be like in an independent comic book, like a Tick type universe, where he's like, yeah I guess I'm
just because of how depressed he is.
And like when he's not depressed, how much he just doesn't care. He's like, "Oh, I'm just here to whatever stretch. I'm just here to drink a few beers and let you do some science mumbo jumbo."
Yeah, he's pretty much like he's like in the Venture Bros, but he's like in the actual canon Marvel comics.
That of course opens the multiverse, and that's why in the end it's Mephisto.
I mean, I definitely see why people are saying that.
Oh yeah, me too.
I need to catch up on my WandaVision though. I'm trying to get this Blu-ray stuff done, and like in my I traded my Shudder with a bunch of people for all of their streaming services because no one wants to pay for Shudder, and I'm like the only person who has it. So I'm like, hey, if I give you my Shudder, will you give me your Disney Plus login? Hey, if I give you my Shudder, will you give me your Amazon Prime login? So I've just been collecting all these services, and now that I have them all, like I have to wait to watch anything because I'm like, I should be
working.
Yeah.
Work. Which leads into how we end this show with a plug for you. In April, Gold Age Video is releasing Dinosaurs in a Mining Facility with lots of extra features, lots of them.
I think we said it's going to be more like probably more like early May now.
Oh, okay.
But,
that's funny because SOV Horror messaged me because they've had they just moved and they just like were resetting up their office and that, so they're like, it probably won't be till April 1st till Assault on Snake Man's DVD comes out. So we've all been shifted a month, so it's all good.
Awesome. I didn't know that was getting released through them.
Yeah, they're gonna release that with Muppet Pastor as one DVD. It's just a
nice
bare
double
bones
feature
of that. I gave it to them because they said, they need things so they can sell it for cheap. That way, people in America can get it, and I don't have to pay. They don't have to be charged the extra $10 to order it.
Yeah,
because it won't be as bad for shipping. They can sell it for probably like $7 American.
I want the physical media copy of it. I mean, I have the file on my hard drive already, and I've watched it. But I want it on my shelf, especially now that I have Personal Space Invader 1 and 2 on Blu-ray, so then I can have the whole filmography.
If anyone orders from SOV Horror, Assault on Snake Man, and Muppet Pastor, it doesn't have commentary tracks. But if you then post a picture of it and send it to me, I'll send you the commentary tracks.
Nice.
The full X-rated secret commentary tracks.
Yeah, I'm trying to like wrangle the cast members because I'm trying to get the documentary for mine done, and I've been assembling all the footage, and it's just like hard to get people scheduled to commit to do interviews for it. But
it was easy in the middle of the pandemic when everyone was home and you could do things online. Now people are back to doing stuff, but they're really tightening their schedule because everything's still so fucking weird. So it's
this weird nebulous thing, and I keep looking at the calendar like, oh, I've got a month left. I mean, I've already made a lot of headway on it.
You can't just have them come over. And
I can guarantee it's going to be good based on what I already have. It's just like this, you get really ambitious with what you want to do versus what other people's involvement will allow you to do.
Well, your video and editing skills have all grown a lot since you started that movie so many years ago. So now that you're giving a time slot to put it into, I'm pretty sure you'll figure it out.
Thanks. I'm trying.
So, and that's why you're the choice for Robot Dinosaurs, because everyone that I know who has seen in any of the online screenings or the handful of pre-COVID screenings is dying to have that at home. And the ironic part of it is they're dying to have it at home so that they can then show it to people. Because they're like, oh man, I know this friend of mine that didn't come to the screening. They'd love to see it, or I want to show this to like my brother or something.
That's awesome. But I hope people do that. Yeah. That'd be cool.
So it will be a hit.
And the screenplay now, which I'm always tweaking, the outline for the sequel does have robots. So this is sort of and in between my dinosaur film and my robot film, I come on to your show and I talk about robot dinosaurs. So I've completed the trilogy of dinosaur robot.
Awesome.
This
So
has been
glad we
awesome.
can make this work.
This
Yeah.
is great to sort of like just bullshit with somebody and recharge my batteries and because I've just been
What happened. So anyway, thanks again. I'm gonna render this guy, and we'll talk to you later. And guys, check out Dinosaurs in Mining Facility when it comes out on Blu-ray, and we'll keep you all up to date on everything else. And Robosaurus, watch out for him, because when you fall asleep, you might become him. Thanks again, Jordan. Thanks so much. You take care.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye.